What's the point of a father? Do we even need a father anymore? Is that an outdated thing? Should women just walk into a clinic, get the injection with a turkey baster real quick and walk out with a baby kind of thing? No, fatherhood is a primal feature that we are designed to need, to the extent that children track that safety mechanism from having that father. We used to, at least when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, and very unkindly, they would make fun of women who did various behaviors and say she has daddy issues. Daddy didn't love her. She didn't have daddy to protect her, kind of thing like that. That's really what it is. Daddy provides so much of the care and nurturing and safety and expectations for a young woman. This is what a man's going to expect from you. Fathers are overwhelmingly important for both young boys and girls, and we sure don't talk about that anymore.
All right, welcome back to the Better Human podcast. We have a guest coming back today, Adam Lane Smith. What's going on, my man?
It is good to talk to you again, Greg. How you doing?
It's always good to talk to you. You're a gem and you're a scholar and you've got so much insight around attachment theory. And for the audience, Adam came on before and we spoke a lot about the attachment theory and the work that he does. And, it left me thinking about a number of things. And I reached out to Adam and I was like, bro, what about coming on back? And let's go a little bit deeper. Let's talk a little more about sort of what we can do to manage some of these dysfunctional attachments that we have, which is we'll go through today. A little bit about that sort of brain chemistry as well, because I saw a post that he put out recently talking about that. And I was like, you know what? That's interesting. We should rap about that. But for the audience, just as a quick reminder, Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist. Adam has been doing this work when it comes down to the attachment theory for a long time. He does a lot of counseling and coaching and therapy with couples, with military veterans, with entrepreneurs, executives, really helping them understand what this concept is around attachment and where we sit, and then developing a lot of tools around how to manage some of these things. Because we're not always. We grow up and we turn into adults and we realize in some quotation that we've got some issues. And what Adam helps us do is figure out where those things come from and really how easy it is for us to practice and work some exercises and follow some frameworks to start to manage that in ourselves so we can have very healthy relationships with our spouses, with our family, with our friends, even our team members and people that we spend our professional lives with. Adam also puts out a ton of content, not just on social, but a lot of video programs and online programs above and beyond some of the live work that he does. Adam does a lot of one-on-one work, but also does a lot of work with groups and tends to guide his clients on this transformative journey to what we might describe to unearth and bravely confront some of those deep-rooted patterns and beliefs, and helps us spark that sort of journey and self-discovery and allowing us to really build that sort of authentic connection. So if you didn't listen to the first episode, scroll on back and check out that one first and then come back to this episode and we'll kick off with part 2. Adam, welcome back to the show, my man.
Great to be back, man. I've been looking forward to this. I had you on my podcast not that long ago. That was exciting and what a wonderful conversation that was. Thank you for doing that. I'm excited for this one today. Audience out there, if any of you guys have ever been unhappy in relationships, and I know that's most of you, this episode is for you guys.
Yeah. And, we were talking a little bit about this before, which is just what is so dysfunctional in relationships today and what type of attachment that is. So let's kick the audience off with just sort of that baseline again. What is attachment theory? And then what are the 4 types of attachment, 1 being a positive one and 3 being quite dysfunctional? What are those?
You've got it, Greg. Okay. So attachment theory, I'm going to make this real simple so it means something to people. This is not going to be dry from a textbook. Attachment is the way that we connect to other people to give and receive love. And half of us get that right. And if you're in that half of the camp that had magical, loving family growing up, you had no medical issues that really traumatized you, your parents took care of you and they listened to you and they reasoned things through with you. They weren't tyrants. They solved problems with you and you built into a loving, trusting relationship. If you're out there, hello, magical unicorns, I'm sure that your life is probably quite nice. And that's a good way to set up. That's how we're supposed to set up. For the rest of you out there who are listening to that and saying, Adam, that is a magical Hollywood fantasy. Nobody has loving families like that. You know what? You're not far off. The research shows that about 65% of people now have broken or insecure attachment, where they grew up in a family structure that did not teach them that they will be able to receive love without fear, that they will be given much love or care, that things will come without big strings attached. A lot of us struggle with emotional regulation. Other people struggle with feeling worthwhile. Okay. This is attachment. It's the way that you connect to give and receive love and to get your needs met.
Did you say 60 up to 65% of adults are
insecurely attached?
Insecurely attached, right? They've got
worse.
Dysfunctional attached. What do you think that's caused by? I mean, thinking about generations, like if we think about our grandparents' generation, was it the same, or what do you think's contributed to this
Are you sure
massive?
you want to get me on this? Because this,
yeah, let's go, man.
It's a vicious rabbit hole.
Let's go.
Men dying in wars, men going through the meat grinder from World War I, World War II, all the subsequent wars that have come out of that, women having to step forward and lead and take care of the families because the men are dead or the men are checked out. And then just industrialization as a whole, ripping families apart, families moving from those thriving rural hubs into the cities and then losing all their extended family connections, the overwhelming stress, the breakdown of all those family units, and then the frustration, and then being able to completely separate from your family forever and leave, the dating culture that grew up with the boomers with cars. Now you have mobile sex wagons, everything that has grown since then. And then a no fault divorce leading to just an endless array of divorces that have happened where it's now normal and people just take a lifelong vow and then just break it because they don't feel good anymore. Things like that. But now what we have got through all those generations and generations of brokenness through the last 120 years that I've tracked is people that have never seen a functioning family system, people that love and connection doesn't make sense to them, people that when I get on a podcast and talk about people taking you seriously and listening to your needs and hearing you out and trying to reason with you and solve problems, that it sounds like a fairy tale because they've never experienced that. That's why we're getting to 2/3 of people have broken attachment now.
Wow. So let's go back to, because you dropped a number of things there, right? Father not being around, divorce becoming okay and acceptable. You know, I love your sex wagons. Sex wagons, is that what you called it? Sex mobiles, right? But let's go back to the father comment, right? So have you seen in your research the connection between the father not being around and the kids growing up with insecure attachment?
Oh my goodness. So the research on this is wild and people don't want to believe it, but they found that the mental health outcomes of children who do not have a father present are catastrophically bad. For example, more than 99% of mass shooters come from fatherless homes. It's catastrophically bad if a child does not have a father. It's a major indicator, a father in the home present, especially married parents. If a child doesn't have that, horrifically bad. What's really fascinating is if a child doesn't have a mom present, but does have a very engaged father, their mental health outcomes are actually pretty good, which is we would not expect. We would not expect, but fathers are enormously important. I saw some research just the other day for children with autism. They found they did scans and they found that children with autism, the father's cortisol level corresponds almost 1-for-1 with the child's cortisol level in the home. But with the mom's cortisol level, there's almost no correlation at all as long as the child has some basic functioning skills. That it really is your father that provides so much of your stability.
So what is that? I mean, might sound like a silly question, but what does the father bring that the mother doesn't? Is it the style of parenting? Is it just this primitive thing? I mean, how do we define that? Like, what are the behaviors, the actions, the things that the father does that the mother doesn't do?
That's not a silly question at all, because the audience at home right now, they're asking that question every day. That question is in the news every day. What's the point of a father? Do we even need a father anymore? Is that an outdated thing? Should women just walk into a clinic, get the injection with a turkey baster real quick and walk out with a baby kind of thing? No, fatherhood is a primal feature that we are designed to need, to the extent that children track that safety mechanism from having that father. We used to, at least when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, and very unkindly, they would make fun of women who did various behaviors and say she has daddy issues. Daddy didn't love her. She didn't have daddy to protect her, kind of thing like that. Right? We used to make fun of daddy issues, and that has gone away because strangely now everybody seems to have daddy issues. But That's really what it is. Daddy provides so much of the care and nurturing and safety and expectations for a young woman. This is what a man's going to expect from you. This is how a man will treat you. This is how a man will behave toward you. And here is how you can get your needs met from a man. And then when it comes to sons, fathers are supposed to initiate sons into male bonding. That includes vasopressin bonding, one of the bonding hormones. Vasopressin bonding, men have more receptors for this than women do. We need men to initiate us into it. And if you don't have a present and engaged father who is really connecting with you, you won't initiate into proper male bonding. So fathers are overwhelmingly important for both young boys and girls. And we sure don't talk about that anymore.
There's interesting. I wasn't expecting to go here, but let's just hang here for a bit. So, I mean, you've said a couple key things, which is an engaged, connected father. Like you've said that a couple times. It's not just about being physically there. There's a presence you need to operate with. There's an activeness that you need to participate with in the raising and the relationship and stuff. So in today's world, what does that look like? I mean, kids are, glued to digital screens. There's an attack on the male. There's an attack on the father, right? As you said it earlier, you don't need a man, right? You could have everything without it. You don't need the father. So what can we do as fathers to show up in this engaged, connected way?
I love this. So, the reason I love this is so much of the audience at home probably has never seen a fully connected, engaged father. Most of what we've seen is the Homer Simpson father, especially on TV, especially in TV ads. And then a lot of dads have followed suit with that, unfortunately. A lot of dads are just exhausted. They're stressed. They're burned out. So I will use myself as example, not because I'm a perfect father, but because I've got 15 years of training in psychology. So I've learned how to be an okay dad is what it is. I've pulled back some of those paces. So how do you be an engaged, connected father? The way to be an engaged and connected father with your children is to give them the fullness of your time and your attention, to be present where your feet are. For myself, for example, on Friday mornings, everything stops. I have no work. Nobody, and my assistant knows never to communicate with me on Fridays. Leave me alone till at least 1:00. And I lay on the floor with my kids. And we play toys, we play Godzillas, we play action figures, we play Tea Party. My kids climb on me, they leap on my back, I ride them around like a pony. Whatever they want to do, we play, and I'm down on their level. I'm not sitting on the couch on my phone like this with a movie on saying I'm dad of the year because I let my kids watch a Disney film. I'm down on their level playing with them. If there's a TV on, we're talking and we're engaging through it, and we're talking about what's happening on the screen. We're talking about the story. We're talking about, oh, why'd they do that? What happened there? And I'm guiding them. It's a teaching aspect. It's a teaching element. If we're eating lunch, we're all together at the table. It's not me sitting on the couch snacking on a sandwich while they're over at the table and eating without me. So much of the concerns that moms have, maybe 90%, it seems like, of the complaints that wives have is that fathers are checked out and they're not leaning in appropriately. They're not getting down on the floor. They're not sitting at the table. They're not speaking. They're not asking questions. They're not connecting. Biggest change a father can make is to spend 10 minutes a day with his kid, just asking them questions to get to know them. If you have to start somewhere, start there.
Yeah. And quality questions, not questions like, how was your day? Because that's a generic question, but maybe more intimate questions, or maybe questions that draw out more dialogue and conversation and insight.
So here's what I teach my guys when they come into me, because there's a lot of dads come to me for coaching on this. I say, look, what you're going to do is something called branching questions. You ask them a question, any question, it doesn't even matter. You can ask them, how's your day? And they'll tell you, and you say, okay, why was it that way? Why was it that way? What made it that way? What was something that stood out to you today? What was a challenge you faced today? And then they'll talk to you and they'll start engaging. Once you get something, you ask them, oh, really? Tell me more about that. Is that common? Does that happen a lot? Do you enjoy that? Why do you enjoy that? Why don't you enjoy that? What would you like to do different? Is that every single day? What do you do on different days? Right? You just keep learning. It's a spirit of curiosity. If you can foster a spirit of actually wanting to know about your kids, that is the number one step that you've got to take as a dad. Actually want to know something about your kids. Otherwise, you're going to be one of these jerks that, they grow up, they're 25 years old. You're still buying them stuffed teddy bears because you say, well, you love stuffed teddy bears, and they're 25 years old now, right? And he's like an executive at a company or something like that. No, it's not going to work that way. You have to get to know him, and then you have to continuously learn who they are, who they're becoming. Kids change so fast. Be curious. Be ongoing curious.
Yeah. My daughter's almost 10. She's actually 10 this year. And I was chatting about this the other day, which is like, I remember moving to Canada when I was 10 and just remembering that time. Like I was old, I was mature, I was a person, and I'm looking at my daughter who's 10 and I'm like, man, she's absolutely there. You know, I was thinking about, as you were talking about, just this whole conversation about fatherhood, and the mental health, status out there, specifically with men. And we know when it comes down to suicide, 80% of suicide is by male. And you mentioned earlier, like, you know, things that sort of create challenge for us is that stress. So, I mean, what are some, I don't even know what my question is, if more it's just a comment, which is, it almost seems out there that times are so fucked up right now, and that, you know, there's so many mountains to climb, and you're in this world of isolation and digital screens and stuff. And, you know, this is what's wearing men down. This is what's wearing fathers down. And they're not taking on activities. They're not putting themselves in certain environment. They're not making certain decisions like physical health, right? Which contributes to that mental health. And, you know, they're not controlling or being intentional about their time with their family and with their kids. And, you know, without doing any of these things, they're a victim to the environment and to circumstances. And before you know it, you wake up one day and you think, where the fuck did I go? What happened to the guy that I used to be? Right. And as you said, time goes fast, right? I mean, it flies by. So, you now have missed all this opportunity to connect and bond and build relationships with your kids. And maybe that's where the question is, do we get to a stage that it's too late? Like if we haven't done this when kids are at a certain age, if we haven't met them with these certain connections, let's say by their formative years, it's going to be very difficult for us to create that? Or as I'm asking that actually doesn't make sense, in the sense that it could always happen, right? It's just about starting.
You know, I love this question. I'll get personal with you just for a minute. One of the most impactful clients that ever came to me, I was amazed by her story. She was 78 years old, and she came to me after a lifetime of pain and abuse and massive hardship. And she was terminally ill and dying at the same time. And she had 3 children, and they had children, and even some of those children had children. So she was just barely a great grandmother, and they were all scattered, all disconnected, barely spoke, and horrible, horrible family structures. And she said, Adam, I'm afraid it's too late, and I know I'm dying, but before I do, I want to figure out a way to give my daughters some kind of connection so that they will be stronger together in this world even after I'm gone. I said, I'll help you. And I did. And what we did was begin with her understanding of relationships very quickly. I just opened up my brain, dumped it into her brain. As she understood relationships differently, then we got in contact with one of her daughters that was the most likely to open up to her. And we got connected, and I showed her exactly how to walk through those relationship conversations. They built them. And her daughter, it was like dry tinder. Like the fire just started immediately because she wanted it so bad. That's the thing, is the longer you wait, the longer people need it and the longer they want it. Now, we picked the person who was most likely to go for it, not the child who was least likely, because then that child spread to the other children and started reporting on how mom had changed. And the other children started thinking, I wonder why. I'm kind of curious now. And then they were more likely to engage. So we warmed up the next kid. Then we went to the next kid and helped warm up and helped do it. And it went great. Then we went to the most stubborn child of all, and they'd been warmed up by the other 2 already. And we still found a way to make it work. It was tougher, still found a way to make it work. Then with the grandkids, then building connections with the grandkids. And then, I mean, the great grandkids were just barely toddlers at the time, but it was a deep family system. By the time she finally passed away, her family was stronger and healthier and happier than they had ever been in their entire lives. So now it's never too late. I would say do it now so you don't miss out on any time together, but no, it's never too late.
Yeah. You know, I was going to say that it sounds like by doing that work and healing those relationships, that family was able to now take that secure attachment moving forward. And this now creates generational connection, right? So
this is what I
for
call
generations,
skill. These are heirloom skills that you hand down.
Yeah. All right. Let's jump into, so we spoke about what the attachment theory is. And we know there are 4 types of attachments, which we were starting to break down. 3 of them are dysfunctional. One of them is good, which is called secure attachment, right? So we're going to come back to the good one. Let's start with the 3 dysfunctional ones, right? So, First being anxious attachment, right? So what is anxious attachment? How does it show up? And maybe what are some things that we can do to manage that, right? Like manage that, improve so I'm not affected by it.
So for the people at home, you've definitely seen this in yourself or in other people. Anxious attachment is when we don't think we deserve to be loved. We think there's something wrong with us on the inside. We start feeling like, you know what? I am in a constant deficit when I'm in a relationship with other people. I got to earn approval. I have to make people like me. Maybe they'll adopt me like a puppy, and maybe they won't abandon me. Fear of abandonment is the biggest thing for these people. They think that other people have to make them feel good. So in turn, they have to make other people happy by throwing themselves away in every relationship. It is endless self-sacrifice for the sake of approval. Anybody at home, if that's ringing a bell, that's anxious attachment. It makes you what we call codependent. You will find people who have problems so you can give them love and give them care and endlessly earn their approval, but it's never really going to work out because that's not how a relationship is built.
And what creates that? Like, is it as basic as like that kid grew up not having that approved love and therefore, or were they overloved? I mean, does it work both ways?
Now here's an interesting point. There's a bonding hormone called oxytocin, and in childhood and in adulthood, it's very addictive. We crave it. It actually is one of our mechanisms for feeling safe as a human. And when we get it, it cuts down chronic pain. It improves our immune system, improves our sleep quality, improves our stress regulation. It's enormously important, but it's very addictive. And when we're in childhood, it's definitely a measurement of safety. So if someone gives it and then takes it away and gives it and takes it away and gives it and takes it away. If somebody's very inconsistent, if mom is massively anxious herself and gives it, then takes it away. If she has a personality disorder, if she's gone a lot, daycare in massive quantities too early can cause this. But you got the chemical and then it was taken away and you don't understand why, and you've blamed yourself. You think you are the reason that you had it taken away. And you experience painful withdrawal effects in your brain as you have it taken away. It's not just an average thing. So it really is like, why did they stop loving me? That is the experience that creates anxious attachment style.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've seen this or I was thinking about this where the kid, as you said, gets dropped off at daycare too early, right? But in some cases, parents don't have choices, right? Like they're working parents. So you're reliant on a system, but it's almost like one of the worst places you could drop your kid off is at a daycare, in considering the fact that it can potentially create that anxious attachment in the future, right? I mean, you see kids screaming when you drop them off at daycare, right? And what do the daycare people say? Don't worry, they'll be fine once you leave, right? And mom is like, it's tearing at her heartstrings. Wow. There's got to be a better system, I would assume, right? So on that note, I mean, what you got to drop your kid off at daycare. I mean, there's no choice. What do you do?
Yeah, no, this is fair because I know a lot of our audience is stuck in that process right now, and they're feeling that. I don't have any hatred in my heart at all for like single parents who have to use daycare or have to use a nanny or anything like that. Mm-hmm. It is what it is.
Well, would a nanny be better than daycare, for example? Like, let's say
they can be, but you're still rotating caregivers. One nanny that cares for them for the first 10 years of their life is very different from, hey, we have a different nanny every 6 months. Hey, we use a nanny system. Hey, you bond with a nanny for 3 years and then that nanny disappears. That's a wound in itself.
Mm. Wow. It's almost like the odds are against us, right? If we come into adulthood and we're not dysfunctional, then man, that was some sort of miracle or some sort of unicorn.
Well, I mean, look at how we meant to be raised in a family tribal structure where there's always a woman around that we're related to who can take care of us. There's always someone to pick up the slack. If your dad got killed and eaten by a lion, your grandfather or your uncle steps in, so you still have a dad figure, right? You always have these rotating family members who take care of you, so you can always have your attachment replenished. You can always have that healing brought in. You can always have someone taking care of you at some point. We don't have that anymore. We don't even have family structures at all. You don't even have a dad anymore, let alone like 5 uncles who will step in and become your pseudo dad if something happens to that dad. You don't have anything anymore. So yeah, now we're paying strangers to raise our kids, and even if the strangers are well intentioned, we're still paying rotating strangers. Who does the kid connect to? Who does the kid really bond with? Who does the kid say this person will be there for the rest of my life? Who does the kid say this person keeps me safe at night when I'm scared? Who does the kid have to do that with? Well, they don't really have you because you're gone most of the time, and they wonder why you keep abandoning them often. And they don't have those caregivers who keep rotating. They keep breaking those bonds. Eventually, it really diminishes your child's desire to bond to anyone because it just keeps leading to pain. And that is the system we're in right now. And again, no judgment on parents who are trapped in that, but that's why a lot of people are choosing to make harder sacrifices to try to prevent that or maintain home care for as long as possible on those kids.
Yeah. The saying, it takes a village to raise a child, and you've just defined that. And as you were talking, like, I'm thinking about some of my friends, like the families that we're friends with in Costa Rica, and they are extremely, family oriented, like uncles and aunts, and everyone's in there, and the grandparents, and it's a big thing. And, in today's world, there's so much, or people are very quick to cancel relationships with mom, with dad, with brother, with sister, with, extended family. And, I'll share with you, there's a conflict with my family, specifically with my brother. And, he sort of really disconnected and pulled away. And like, we've all got kids now. And I said to him a while ago, I said, it's not about us anymore. It's about these kids, and like, the cousins and the family, and everyone needs to sort of grow up together. And in absence of that, besides it just being a shitty situation, right? Which is, you don't get to have these close relationships with your cousins, right? Where you meet them when you're 6, when you're 10, when you're 12, and you barely know them. Like there's a massive miss. So, I was just contemplating, that now in my own life, which is, the importance of creating or maintaining strong bonds with your family, right? Fuck, man, the world that we're in, Adam.
And I'm sure, really quick on that point, I'm sure people at home in the audience, because I say the same things. I'm a big advocate for bonds with family where appropriate, but a lot of people in the audience at home are saying, you don't know my family, you don't know how bad they are, you don't know how toxic they are, you don't know how they act. And I hear that all the time too. And yeah, families need to be really culled and healed and fixed. And we definitely need safety boundaries on things for the children's sake as well. I think that there's a world in which we can rebuild families going forward, is what I think we're looking at.
I think you just nailed something really important, which is the success in our humanity starts with the family. And if we can't rebuild those close relationships with technically people we're related to, fuck, how are we going to do this in the outside world? How are we all going to get along, right? How are we going to live as this global community where we do grow versus these dysfunctional times that we're living in? Before I had kids, I was very quick to blow anyone off. There was a time in my life where it didn't matter whether you're mom, dad, brother, sister, uncle, aunt. If you were a toxic human being, I would write you off. And it almost became too easy to label people toxic people, because then that removed your need to feel connected to them. Maybe I'm actually describing the avoidant attachment right now. Right? And, hindsight's 2020, Adam. I mean, the interesting thing about wisdom is it takes a life to become wise, and how important it is to have that wisdom when you're young. So we're not going to mess up our kids and mess up our marriages and mess up our communities. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's talk about the avoidance attachment, right? So we went through anxious, right? What creates that? We'll come back to maybe things we can do to help manage that and improve that. What is avoidance attachment?
It's honestly, this is the biggest challenge that I help most men with nowadays. Avoidant attachment is the belief that nobody else on the world will ever be fair to you. Nobody else is going to play by the rules. And when the stress hits, you cannot trust anybody. So you're going to have to be a lone wolf. It's a survival mode that's built into every human that can click on. Yeah. And it can click on. And what it does is it prevents you from bonding with other people biochemically. It prevents you from opening up to other people. It prevents you from being weak in that regard and vulnerable. It prevents you from having drama in your life. It prevents you from being tied down, and it saves you from getting trapped into relationships that will be unfair. What it also does is prevent you from experiencing the richness of bonding, of love, of fulfillment. It tags everybody as a threat so that you can't even connect to the few people who are worthy of your trust and would make your life better. And then when you're 50, 60 years old, those guys come to me, they're top level executives. They've climbed the ladder through cortisol and stress and all of that. But now they're at the top of the mountain. They're getting ready to fall back down the mountain because they can't connect to the people they're trying to mentor mentor. They can't connect to their team. Their team isn't loyal to them. They can't connect to the other executives. They can't connect to their board members. They can't connect to anybody. They climb the mountain and now they're ready to fall back down. You got to fix the avoidant attachment style and learn who to trust and how to really connect with people if you want to stay at the top of the mountain.
Yeah. Well, there's that saying, which is if you want to go fast, you go by yourself. If you want to go far, you go with a group.
Correct.
Right? Because then we need a community, back to the community to raise us, and then a community to live in, and then a community to work with. Like it's everything you're talking about. And all of these issues that we have in life, if I might paraphrase, are resolved by having close, connected relationships in a community. In fact, blue zones, where you hear about blue zones where people live to be, 100 plus, but healthy. In fact, for the audience, if you watch that Netflix special, one of the things they did was they created these 9 boxes of, well, like, what are the commonalities between all these different blue zones, right? And they ended up with these 9 quadrants. And the most powerful quadrant, and what was really sort of emphasized between all of those communities, wasn't the food, wasn't the sun, wasn't the environment, wasn't the exercise, but it was the community. And it was defined by laughing and playing, right? So singing and laughing and playing and just, celebrating and, being with other people, which is unfortunate because when we look at what is happening in today's world, it seems like everywhere you look, left, right, and center, there is a divide, there is a side to pick, there is a war, there's an opposition, there's a you are this, you are not that. And I think this is the ultimate sort of healing that we need to all go through as a world, which is that community. Like that is the focus. That is the ultimate sort of, objective here, right?
I think this is the new step that we're going to have to chase into the future is, when you have broken attachment, when 65% of your population of your nation has broken attachment, everybody's walking around on high threat detection. Everybody's afraid of everybody else. Families are broken. Businesses are broken. Everything is broken. And people are just desperately trying to claw for survival, even if conditions are fairly okay. Even if people are doing okay, their brain is screaming at them, telling them that the end is near. And if you don't fix that as a nation, then your nation is going to implode from overwhelming stress and fear and terror and destruction. So even if conditions are good, conditions are not good. You got to fix the attachment of your nation.
It's a funny example. I was in an airport yesterday. I was traveling to Toronto. I'm a big people watcher, and I'm watching people's behavior, right? People in line, people waiting to get on the plane, people sitting on the plane, people reclining their chairs, people putting their back. And, as you're talking now, I'm like, yeah, you can see it in everyday behavior. There is this unwillingness to be considerate of another human being and to operate in that community. It is, eyes down, right? This is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing. And it's a silly example, but like I watched these 2 people in front of me put their chairs back. And it's one of these planes that it's kind of, you don't put your seat back because they're fucking tiny seats and you're just an asshole if you do that. And if you do that, then I'm going to have to do that. And if I do that, the person behind me going to have to do that. And I watch these 2 people in the front row just wedge these seats back and like all the way down to where basically their seat is like touching you. And I'm thinking, if it was me, what I would have done was first I would have only leaned it back just a little bit in consideration. But what I would have done is actually turned around and said, would you be okay if I just tilted this just a smidget? Does it bother you at not? And it's those basic fundamental human, manners and considerations that we need to get back with people. Okay. When you have anxious and avoidant combined, it creates a third type of attachment concept, which is called disorganized. So break that down for us.
Now, this is going to be fascinating. And this is actually a gigantic thermometer right here for our society. So when a child experiences so much pain that they develop an attachment issue, and then they experience so much more pain that the attachment issue doesn't stop them from being in pain, they develop a second attachment issue. So first they blame themselves maybe, and then they start blaming others, and then they blame everybody. And it comes about from repeated pain and lack of relief from that pain. Now, what's really awful about this is they're very chaotic. They have a hard time settling down in relationships. They blame other people until they start blaming themselves. Even if when things go well, they burn the house down and jump out the window because they can't stand the peace. This is a big indicator for the health of a society. is how many people are growing up with this level of pain. And the research is showing that this is massively increasing in our society. So the research used to suggest that anywhere from 2 to 5% of the population had disorganized style. That's kind of the area you're trying to target. And even for an unhealthy society, that's 2 to 5%. The research shows it's maybe creeping up even into 10%, where we're doubling in that category now, where more and more children are experiencing such overwhelming pain in childhood that they are massively unstable. They can never really be at peace. They can never relax, and they never believe that they're going to be safe ever again. And that's the new generation, Gen Z, coming up right now. It is catastrophic.
And is that because parenting styles had changed, and yes, environments and social changed, but I mean, is it the parenting style that affected them the most?
Families breaking up and then them being told sometimes love just doesn't work. It is arbitrary parenting and parents being stressed out, so they scream at their kids, and then the kids feel like, I'm not lovable, and then they feel like other people are crazy. It is the massive amount of child abuse coming from stepfathers and mom's boyfriends primarily to a large extent. And no one wants to talk about that, but that is one of the biggest driving factors for abuse, especially of little girls. It is an
Like pedophilia, sexual abuse.
Often some of it is, but some of it's just screaming at them, tyranny, domineering behaviors. Yes, many different types of sexual abuse, all kinds of problems that come about. People don't want to talk about the effect of mom's boyfriends on the next generation, but mom's boyfriends are some of the worst bombs to hit the next generation. So yeah, it's getting much worse.
Well, and with such a single parenting environment, because as we talked about before, you get married and someone sneezes and you can get divorced now. No fault divorce, super easy, do it fast, get out now. Kids are young. You still can date. You can still get married. I mean, I just met this guy.
Sorry, what's so common now, and it's sad, is the moment a young woman breaks up or gets out of her marriage, she gets on the apps. She gets on Tinder. Well, am I still attractive? Can people still like me? And then she rolls through Tinder, and then she has a couple of painful, sometimes traumatic experiences. And then she brings that boyfriend around her kids sometimes if she finds one decent guy. And then she can't go out and date, so she dates at home. So she runs these guys through her home. Even some of the most well-intentioned women are now running strangers through their home. And then they break up. And then the kids learn, oh, I've had 5 new dads already. It's not working out, right? They learn never to connect to anybody that mom brings around, or just ever connect to anybody in general. So even if the guy isn't abusive, it still is frying out their ability to really connect to people from this parade of people mom is walking through the house. And again, that's even well-intentioned single moms that aren't, horrible, abusive people. It's happening more and more that we're just okay with this. That's a huge problem for the next generation, and they're showing it.
Yeah. Well, I think the Gen Z generation, their parents are the most divorced. I don't know if I'm even saying that right, but like they've got the highest divorced ratio of parents. Because divorce is normal, right? Listen, Adam, I see it in my life, in my world, in my clients, in my community, friends, like, it is rare to stay married. It is rare to push through. And look, my wife and I we're 15, 16 years in now. Right. I think we're one of the couples that has made it. I mean, there were some rough times, right? More on my dysfunction and stuff. And, in some cases, thank God for her for saying, all right, let's just kind of stick this out and try to sort of keep pushing through and working through this. But yeah, I mean, that was the answer. The answer wasn't divorce. The answer was, let's push through. Let's work through. Let's get therapy. Let's see a psychologist. Let's talk to this. Let's download that program.
But even listen to that language right there that you just used without realizing it, and rightly so. But what you just said was, we were one of the few couples that made it, as if marriage is this death meat grinder that you go through where few are going to survive. And the reality is that is often what we're facing now, right? Which is horrible. But that's how we view marriage now. Like, it is a death march. You will be lucky to survive if you are a fortunate one of the few. And it's never been like that through human history. That's not how families are supposed to form. Marriage is not for fun. Marriage is not for feelings. Marriage is not for romance and sex. Marriage is for families. People don't realize that. That's the purpose of marriage, is to build a family. That's we're playing games. We're playing games. And you do not gamble with something that you can't afford to lose. And we have gambled with something we cannot afford to lose, which is the next generation. And they are showing the cracks.
All right. Secure attachment, the good one, right? So for the
We'll
ones
end
that
on a
make
good
it,
note. We'll end on a good note.
what is secure attachment? And then I want to come back to what are some things we can do? Like, how do we recognize if we have a disorganized or anxious and avoidant attachment? Is there an assessment or is there a self-evaluation I go through? And then if I am suffering with one of those attachments, what could I do to start to fix that?
Beautiful.
Mm.
We'll make this real simple. Secure attachment is the belief that you can work with other people who exhibit trustworthy behaviors, that you can measure their trust. I teach my clients the 4 levels of trust for this so they can measure the trustworthiness of other people. And
What are those 4 levels of trust?
Oh man. So you have to be self-policing and consistent with your core principles. Number 1. You have to be self-policing and consistent with a long-term life goal. Number 2. You have to be able to take ownership of your challenges while also accepting somebody else's challenges, who is also taking ownership of their challenges. So mutual acceptance. And then level 4, you have to be mutually fulfilling. And these are 4 levels of trust that you walk through. Not everybody reaches level 4. Most people won't. You might reach 3 people in your life at a time hit level 4. But level 1 is the bare minimum, that somebody has to be self-policing and consistent with their own honor code, their own behaviors, their own integrity, where you follow through and so you can predict what they're going to do when the stress hits, and that they will correct themselves with their conscience back onto the correct path. That is the bare minimum for being able to trust somebody. And most people don't even calibrate around that. That is the minimum. So 4 levels of trust. Secure attachment is built on that. It is built on having that. It is built on not having relationships that don't have that. You say, no, thank you. You move on to find somebody who does have that. And then you build together with those people, and you're very open and clear and direct about what you want and your needs. And you say, hey, I could really use this. Could you do this for me? What would you like in return? How can I take care of you? It's that simple. It is everything's on the table. Everything's clear. Hey, I noticed you did this. Tell me about that. It is not accusatory and angry when someone does something. You ask them questions and you're curious about them. And it's being able to say, you know what? I didn't like this thing that happened. Can we repair this? Can we fix this? What can we do? How can we overcome this? Why did this happen? And how do we make sure it doesn't go forward in the future, so that you can repair breaches in trust and you can be clear and direct with other people about those problems. When you have that, that's called secure attachment. You can earn this, by the way. There's something called earned secure, where you go from the other anxious attachment or avoidant attachment and you build secure attachment, where you didn't grow up with it, but now you have it as a grown up. So you asked me before how to get there, right? How to get there. The first steps: learn the 4 levels of trust really deeply. That's the first thing I do with my clients when they come in for coaching, is I'm going to teach you the foundation of a relationship. 4 levels of trust. What do they mean? And then we're going to walk you through how to apply those in the dating world, how to apply those in friendship, how to tag out specifically the people in your life as they go up that. So you guys have heard the 4 levels. One thing everybody at home can do is sit down and make a list of the people in your life that are on those different levels, and then give them a number. Are they consistent and self-policing with their values? Now they're level 1. Are they consistent and self-policing with their long-term life goals, so that they always track back to it when they're stressed out? You can always predict what they're going to do. They're self-policing that way. Okay, level 2. Do they take ownership of their problems and also help you with your problems, but expect you to take ownership and accountability too? Okay, they can accept you. That's level 3. Now this is a level 3. It's getting into an intimate relationship. Do you have mutual fulfillment, where you've each discussed what you need from the other person and you're each taking care of each other? Great. That's level 4. Very few people listening to this podcast, you probably don't have too many level 4 people like that. You probably say, well, we haven't talked about it, but no. Go through the 4 levels. Track each person in your life, levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. See where they're at. Then put a little star next to anybody that you'd like to go up 1 point with, and go to them and have that conversation. Figure that out. Maybe if you're at level 2, but you want a level 3 and you found someone who's worthy of it, you can go to them and say, you know what? I want to be fair with you about who I am. Here's a challenge I've held back from you, but I'm working on it. So if you ever see me act this way, let me know. I'll be accountable for it. In the future, if I do it, please tell me. I want to stop. And in return, what are you working on? What's your challenge? And how can I help you deal with that challenge as well? It's a very real conversation you might have over a couple of beers, but you have a real conversation with that person and build real accountability and real vulnerability and intimacy with them. And it builds your respect for each other, and it builds that level 3 relationship. That's the only way to go up into a level 4 relationship, by the way, is to have level 3 established. Don't go up to level 4 and lots of feelings.
Yeah, you got to go one stage at a time.
Correct. So take that, start tracking that out. And if you have anxious attachment and you say, I'm the scum of the earth and I don't deserve to have friends, then go through the 4 levels of trust yourself and see where you fit on there. Are you being consistent and self-policing with your values? Are you being self-consistent and self-policing with your goals? Are you taking ownership of your challenges and able to speak about them to other people without shame so that you can let them know what's going on? Are you able to have mutual fulfillment with other people instead of keeping secrets and trying to make people happy just so that they'll make you happy in return, right? But where are you at on the 4 levels of trust? Avoidant people need to learn them to measure others. Anxious people need to learn them to measure themselves.
Okay. And then back to, because we got to be careful about self-diagnosing, right? Which is we get on Google and we Google all these symptoms. We're like, I have that, right? So in effort to ensure that we don't self-diagnose improperly, how does one find out if they are more of an avoidant, anxious or disorganized attachment? Is there an assessment, or is it as simple as recognizing as a personality, I'm anxious and I'm anxious in these relationships, and that becomes the signal?
Yeah. We even have to be careful with the word anxious because a lot of avoidant people will say, well, I do have some anxiety. Maybe I'm anxious attachment. It's not about the anxiety. Anxious attachment, that's also called preoccupied anxious. It's self-blame, low self-esteem, crushingly low self-esteem. I do not deserve love. Other people will abandon me. I am afraid of abandonment. That really is anxious attachment. I am the problem. I must sacrifice myself for other people. I don't even deserve love. That's anxious attachment. Avoidant is very much other people are the problem. It's not other people are evil. Other people cannot be trusted. Other people cannot be counted on. I don't have a mechanism for trusting people, and I will not trust people. I'm a lone wolf. That's avoidant attachment. Disorganized is, man, I don't know. I flip back and forth. When people love me, I run away. And when people don't love me and treat me like crap, I become really approval seeking, right? That's the flipping back and forth. That's the disorganized style. But keep in mind, people at home, you're going to get on, you're going to try to diagnose, you're going to say this and that, and it's going to be like your astrology sign. No, these can be changed. These are your current survival patterns. They can change, and you can change them consciously.
I'm glad you described it that way, which is it's a survival pattern, which we've gotten very used to running, and we could always develop and create new patterns, healthy patterns, and we can do that consciously, right? Awesome. Adam, I know we were going to get into the chemistry of the brain as well, but we're kind of coming to the top of the hour. But why don't we still jump into it just very quickly so we could, walk through that and help the audience understand what are those 5 different chemicals and what do they do?
Absolutely. This is really the cream on top. So when you have attachment issues, your brain chemistry is massively off. And I believe this is what's leading to our whole idea that we have to medicate everybody to death because our brain chemistry is off. Your brain chemistry is actually off because of your behavior patterns and your attachment challenges. So here's what it looks like. When you have attachment issues, especially avoidant attachment issues, you are flooded with cortisol, stress all the time. You block off most of the oxytocin, which is the love hormone that makes you feel loved and safe and accepted. Oxytocin then releases GABA, which also releases melatonin to help you sleep at night. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that shuts down the cortisol in the future and makes you less stressed. So when you're avoidant, you won't get that. You won't get oxytocin, love, and acceptance. You won't get GABA, suppressing cortisol. You also won't get vasopressin. Vasopressin is a hormone released that when you solve stress and challenges with somebody, it releases and says, this person is my ally. I like this person. They've actually done research now. The research indicates that vasopressin bonding is one of the biggest indicators for a marriage staying together long term and reigniting the honeymoon bond over and over and over so that you have 5 honeymoon phases. If you want to do that, vasopressin is your key. When you have avoidant attachment, you also won't engage in much deeper, intimate conversation with people, so you won't get much serotonin through your human bonding relationships. You'll be barely scraping the barrel on what scraps of serotonin you can get. So you'll be depressed, you'll be stressed, you'll be unhappy, you'll be lonely, and you'll think that this is normal life. And so you'll be flooded with cortisol. And the only coping mechanism you have is dopamine, which is flooded through our entire society right now. We are dopamine obsessed culture. We are drowning in it. We have these little nightmare rectangles right here. You can stare into it and you could either fill yourself with pleasure or watch your civilization collapse in real time. Either one. And you can go back and forth between the two as you choose. So that is the avoidant brain with that brain chemistry. Anxiously attached people are flooded with oxytocin, but only in the presence of avoidant people who know how to trigger it in them by making them feel good, which is why anxiously attached people obsessively chase avoidant people to try to get that good feeling from them. They have GABA only when they are earning approval from somebody else, which is why they are codependent and obsessed with approval. They have very low vasopressin because they don't really know how to solve problems. They think other people solve problems for them, and they need somebody to solve problems for them. And they have very low serotonin because they don't engage in deeper conversations with people, typically, because they're afraid of being exposed as a fraud and being unlovable. So they have depression, they have high anxiety, and they are chasing the overwhelming craving for approval so that they can temporarily biochemically feel safe and feel loved for a moment, which is why anxiously attached people throw themselves at avoidantly attached people all the time. When you have disorganized style, you have both of those. You have not only do you sometimes not get oxytocin and GABA, but then sometimes you do get them and you're obsessed with them. And then it triggers a fear response. This is from the work of Dr. Sue Carter at the Kinsey Institute. It triggers a fear response where you are terrified because now you have an oxytocin bond and you're addicted to someone, and it makes you want to leap out the window, set the house on fire, and run away. So then you sabotage the relationship. And then you say, oh no, what have I done? So you kick in the door and grab the person and say, I'm here to rescue you. And then you drag them out, and now there's a fire, but now you're scared because they're outside with you and they've seen that you've lit a fire. So now you run away into the woods because now you're afraid of being exposed. So it's this endless chaotic plunge from your brain chemistry.
It's nuts, man. You know, I'm thinking about it as you talk about this. I'm like, these are all these people running down and doing these retreats of mushrooms and ecstasy. And they're coming out. They're like, I'm in touch with my heart and I've opened up my third eye and blah, 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 blah. No, you have an attachment issue and you don't need ayahuasca. You don't need ecstasy and MDMA. What you need, actually, I should say MDMA, not ecstasy. What you need is you need to work recognize these patterns and then put things in place to improve that behavior and that pattern. And thereafter, you're going to naturally generate this chemistry, this dopamine, right? This oxytocin. Oxycontin's a drug. And we just might resolve some of these issues. And this is where I think people get too caught up in I'm going to go do this exercise for 3 days in the jungle because this is going to answer my problem. And they become retreat junkies, right? They're going from one retreat to the next retreat to the next retreat. And you're like, listen, you know what your real issue is? You have an attachment issue. Well said, Adam. Well said. All right. We're going to come to the last question in a minute, which is the better human question, which I might change to better marriage. But if people wanted to learn more about you, where can they come and find you? Drop your YouTube, your Insta, all your links, your website.
Yeah. If you need coaching, if you want to join my mentorship community, if you need a course that will fix this for you very quickly, whether you're avoidant or anxious, click on to adamlanesmith.com, where I have every resource for you there. I'm also on YouTube and Instagram as @AttachmentAdam with a ton of content to help you educate yourself, gain a lot of information, and learn exactly the love and connection that you have been missing all of your life. I'm here to help. Please don't hesitate to reach out. I am here to assist you.
And you have an awesome podcast. Drop the podcast.
I have an amazing podcast called the I Wish You Knew podcast, where we bring on experts in their fields from all around the world, and we pick their brain about what it means to be a loving human in a great relationship in 2024. And you know what? Maybe even in the year 3000, we're building the future of relationships on that podcast.
It's amazing. For the audience, I was on his show recently, and that episode's dropping in the next few weeks. So we'll make sure that we promote it and we get your ears on that one as well. Adam, at the end of the show, we come to the better human question, which I said we're going to change to the better marriage question, which is considering everything we just discussed today and how important it is for us to have a healthy marriage in order to raise healthy children. Like the reason we are married is to build this family and to raise these amazing little human beings. What do you think we could all do to have a better marriage tomorrow?
Sit down and learn not only how your partner communicates, but why they communicate that way. Your partner is probably not an idiot. If you're a thinker and they're a feeler, they will sound like an idiot. And if you're a feeler and they're a thinker, they will sound like a tyrant. Sit down and learn how they communicate and why, and you can be a thriving couple together. It's just going to probably take some translation.
It's amazing. To the audience, if you're not following Adam, go and follow Adam Lane Smith. Check out his websites. He's got amazing materials and online opportunities and even coaching one-on-one and for couples. So if you're interested, he's an awesome resource and can definitely be a positive impact in your life. If you like today's episode, don't forget to like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share, keep promoting, right? In fact, we're actually getting more and more and more downloads, which we're very excited about. As you know, we're also trying to contribute to everyone being better humans. And it's these types of shows and speaking with guys like Adam that allow us to learn, grow, and always improve. Smash those stars, give us a good rating. And at least if not, none of that, come back next week and let's check out next episode. Stay happy, stay healthy, and we'll see all of you soon.
What's the point of a father? Do we even need a father anymore? Is that an outdated thing? Should women just walk into a clinic, get the injection with a turkey baster real quick and walk out with a baby kind of thing? No, fatherhood is a primal feature that we are designed to need, to the extent that children track that safety mechanism from having that father. We used to, at least when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, and very unkindly, they would make fun of women who did various behaviors and say she has daddy issues. Daddy didn't love her. She didn't have daddy to protect her, kind of thing like that. That's really what it is. Daddy provides so much of the care and nurturing and safety and expectations for a young woman. This is what a man's going to expect from you. Fathers are overwhelmingly important for both young boys and girls, and we sure don't talk about that anymore.